So recently, Joe Biden sat down with George Stephanopoulos to have an in-depth interview. This is coming after his debate with Donald Trump, that horrible debate that Joe Biden did. We all witnessed this on the stage. So I guess this was a chance for the Biden administration to try to clear up any, reservations that people have about his candidacy. But it's obviously very clear that Joe Biden is experiencing some type of cognitive decline. And I think you're going to see some of that throughout this interview. I should tell you ahead of time, though, that this interview was actually pre-recorded. It was not live. So that in itself makes me wonder as well, like, why did they have to pre-record this debate? Let's go ahead and get in. It's a doozy. Hold on for it, folks.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It's a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
You know, you say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked them, they did a COVID test because they were trying to figure out what was wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
And
let's just pause there for just a second. I think all of us know what it's like to have a cold. But that being said, you can tell even during this interview, Joe Biden is not the same as he was 4 years ago. Even during the 2020 Democrat primary debates, I started to notice there was a decline there. I remember I was told by multiple people, particularly liberals, not to pay attention to that, not to focus on that, or it's all in my head. He's totally fine. But he wasn't totally fine. And you can even see a stark difference from those debates in 2020 compared to the debate that just happened recently. Notice when Joe Biden is talking during this interview, you'll also notice that he's struggling to get certain things out. So just pay attention to the way that he responds to George Stephanopoulos. And I would not be surprised if these questions were already pre-screened. Again, this is a pre-recorded interview. So 9 times out of 10, George Stephanopoulos' questions were probably already pre-screened. He was probably also told what he could not ask Joe Biden about. I didn't hear much of a discussion about Israel or Gaza during this interview. So that's what gives me pause as well. Let's go on.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, nobody else's fault.
We're going to pause here for a second. Did everyone notice that Joe Biden just said that he wasn't sure if he watched the debate or not? And this is something I think that kind of like just skipped over George Stephanopoulos' head. George Stephanopoulos asked him, he said, "Did you have a chance to watch the debate?" He goes, "I don't think so, no." Wouldn't you know if you watched it or not? What do you mean you don't think so? Now, he's not sure whether he watched the debate or not, but here he is telling you that Donald Trump lied 28 times. So how is it that he knows that, but he doesn't know whether or not he watched the debate? See, this is really interesting because the number of people that have called out the lies that were said during the debate and the fact that there wasn't any fact checking, which there should have been. A number of people called out Donald Trump's lies, but most people did not call out the lies that Joe Biden told during that debate as well. It wouldn't be the first time. Biden has lied multiple times during his a political career. Remember, he said he marched with civil rights leaders. That wasn't true. He lied about his college education. He told, exaggerated there. So it wouldn't be uncommon for Joe Biden to tell a lie, just being honest. But he lied about certain facts and figures. He lied about Medicaid. He lied about unemployment. He lied about the border numbers. So it wasn't just Donald Trump that was lying. We have to pay attention to these things.
No one else is.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night. You've had some bad interviews once in a while. I can't remember any, but I'm sure you did.
I've had plenty. I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching, is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me, to people who are concerned about your age. And, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including till 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
And how quickly did it come to you that you were having that bad night?
Well, it came to me as having a bad night when I realized that even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting. And I let it distract me.
Let me pause for a second. I'm sorry, but that did not happen. That did not happen. Those of us who watched the debate, when did you see any part of the debate that it showed Donald Trump was still shouting? Remember, we could see both of them on our screen. So even if they did turn off his mic, we would still see Donald Trump's mouth moving. We would have heard something from Dana Bash or from Jake Tapper that would have said, okay, you cannot speak now. Your time is up. When did this happen? When did this whole so-called shouting thing happen? I don't remember seeing that. And I don't think you saw that. So here we go again. I think once again, this is Joe Biden going into more and more lies. And nobody press him on this. Nobody pushes back when Joe Biden lies.
I'm not blaming it on that. But I realized that I just wasn't in control.
But part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Here's what they wrote. People who have spent time with President Biden over the last few months or so said the lapses appear to have grown more frequent, more pronounced, and after Thursday's debate, more worrisome. By many accounts, as evidenced by video footage, observation, and interviews, Mr. Biden is not the same today as he was even when he took office 3.5 years ago. Similar reporting in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
In terms of successes, yes.
He's not asking about successes. He's asking about your cognitive ability. And the response to that question is no. So do you see how Joe Biden is deflecting here in terms of success? Yes, that's not what the question was about.
I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that grew the economy.
Those are not things that I would be bragging about. And this goes to show the generation divide here, particularly for a lot of the younger people. Bragging about expanding NATO, that's not a winning point. For those of us that are anti-war, that is not a winning point. You shouldn't be bragging about that. NATO was not supposed to be expanded in the first place. So there's that. Then he says, I'm making peace in the Middle East. How does that look right now, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see any type of peace in the Middle East happening? No, I don't see any type of peace in the Middle East. You have Israel right now committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, and they're also attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. There is anything but peace in the Middle East right now. So what is Joe Biden talking about?
All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Today, announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government.
The 200,000 new jobs. It's interesting. because I've said this before, what good is it to create new jobs if people are not paid a living wage? If the federal minimum wage is still not even $15 an hour, what good is it that you've created all these other jobs? So there's that. People are not being paid a living wage. Two, as I've told you guys before, and as I announced recently from the Forbes report, the economy right now is showing 2008 numbers during the housing crisis. There are a number of people that are being laid off. The Biden administration has continued to ignore this, particularly if you look at the tech companies. A lot of these companies are laying off people by the hundreds, by the thousands. We've had them lay off people here in Massachusetts. It's happening in California, and they're not even mentioning this. So you're creating these jobs, and I would question that number. We need to look at that number, but you're creating these jobs, but people are still being laid off, and the grocery store prices are continuing to increase. So what are these jobs? And nobody presses this question. What are the jobs that you're creating? Are they permanent positions with benefits? I'm willing to bet you they're not. I'm willing to bet a lot of these jobs are contract positions, temp positions without benefits, the gig economy. They never tell you what these jobs are that they created.
I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them. I took on all the things we said we got done.
He did not beat Big Pharma. Yes, he made some cuts there for people that have to use insulin. And I believe that's people over a certain age, but he didn't beat Big Pharma. And let's break this down. Beating Big Pharma would be implementing a universal health care for everybody in this country. That's beating Big Pharma, where people don't have to rely on these predatory, health insurance companies that are ripping people off. That's beating Big Pharma. You're not beating Big Pharma. Joe Biden has told you that if Medicaid or Medicare for All came across his desk, if that bill showed its presence to him, he would veto it. So what do you mean? You didn't beat Big Pharma. People are still struggling to pay for prescription medication. People are still struggling to pay for surgeries, for emergency treatment, just for regular doctor visits, because everyone in this country does not have health care. So that, again, is an embellishment by Joe Biden. No pushback from George Stephanopoulos.
That's what we couldn't get done. And part of it is what I said when I ran was I wanted to do three things: restore some decency to the office, restore some support for the middle class instead of trickle-down economics, go from the middle out and the bottom up. That way the wealthy still do fine, everyone does better, and unite the country.
But what has all that work over the last 3.5 years cost you physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, I just think it cost me a really bad night, a bad run. But, George, I'm optimistic about this country. I don't think we're a country of losers, that he points out. I don't think America's in tough shape. I think America's on the cusp of breaking through in so many incredible opportunities.
This is the class divide. He doesn't think that the country is in poor shape. That's because Joe Biden is not talking to the people that are actually struggling, right? People who don't have health insurance, people who are struggling just to pay the bills. A number of people are being evicted. I told you the homelessness rate increased under his presidency by 25%. People are struggling. You don't see all these tents, all the tent communities outside. I saw tents in DC. They're everywhere. They're not just in California. But you think the country is doing just fine. This is just, I'm going to say this. You can only continue to lie to the American people for so long. We'll see how long that is.
This next term, I'm going to make sure we have straighten out the tax system. I'm going to make sure we're in a situation where we have health care for all people.
That could have already been done. Guys, we have to push back on this rhetoric. We have to push back on this. Now he's saying, I'm going to make sure we're going to have health care for all people. He could have already done that. If he wanted that to happen, he could have already done that. These are false promises to get you to vote for him. Come on, this is a typical politician game. This is what they do. You've been in office all this time. Why didn't you expand healthcare then? Why didn't you give everybody healthcare then? This is such a joke. And he is making these promises to people. These are lies. He is not going to do this to you.
A position where we have childcare and elder care, free up, and all these things. The one thing I'm proudest of And you remember when my economic plan was put forward, a lot of the mainstream economists said it's not going to work. Well, guess what? You now have 16 Nobel laureates, 16 of them in economics, saying that Biden's next term would be, based on what he wants to do, enormous success. Trump's plan would cause a recession, would significantly increase inflation.
I don't think either one of you have the best plan right now. When he says that Trump's plan would cause a recession, we have inflation right now. We've had inflation the last years of your presidency. Like, we've been dealing with this, particularly since the war Russia and Ukraine. Like, this is just, I don't know. Like, you've got to be kidding me. I feel like this is elder abuse. I really do. The way that they are parading Joe Biden out there, the way that his wife, Jill Biden, is like, come on out here, putting him out in front and center in front of all these people. I feel like this is elder abuse. You guys know damn well that Joe Biden is not in the position in his right mind right now to be president of this country. And the fact that you are continuing to push this on people, it's embarrassing. This is going to be laughed at. People are going to be laughing at us for years because, like, this is not the best that we can do as a country. It's not. This is crumbs. You're telling us to take whatever there is, just take anything. There are a number of people that are running for president. I seem to remember people trying to have a Democrat primary, and the DNC totally said, no, we're not going to have a primary. We're not going to have debates. But there were people who are better off that could be in this position instead of Joe Biden. This is ridiculous. You have a number of candidates running outside the two-party system that are much better on policy and positions than Joe Biden. And they know what time of day it is. They know where they're at. They know what's going on. That's what we got to start calling this, folks. This is elder abuse.
Great progress, and that's what I plan on doing, and we can do this.
I understand that, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No, but I'm still in good shape.
Are you more frail?
No.
Oh my God.
I know you
Come
spoke.
keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, you're exhausted. I said, look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong.
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day.
That's a damn lie. You're having a neurological test every day? Come on, guys. Do we really believe this? And let's say that is true, just for shits and giggles. Let's say that is true, that he's having a neurological test every day. That would mean that there's a reason for you to have it. Because there's something wrong, because everything is not all upstairs right now. This is terrible.
With me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been able to read for my physicals. Yes, the answer.
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
This is a mess. This is an absolute mess. I don't believe any of this. I don't believe that anyone, any doctor, any real doctor in their right mind would tell Joe Biden, oh, no, you're fine. You're totally good. But what you have to remember is the president, he's not going to tell you this. If the doctor told him, listen, this is what's going on, you are experiencing some type of decline, they're not going to tell you this. This wouldn't be the first time that we've had a president in this country that was going through medical issues and didn't tell anybody. But there's no way people believe this. There's no way.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. You know, not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, well, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick.
What does that have to do with the cognitive test, though? So you see how he's going into other things. I thought that was interesting that when he got to Netanyahu, he was like, oh, I shouldn't go into detail here. Interesting.
Taking on Putin. I mean, every day, there's no day I go through, there are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that, and the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign.
That's no. Everybody, that should be a red flag. He's asking him, would he be willing to have an independent cognitive test? And he said, watch me the rest of this campaign. That's a no, ladies and gentlemen. That means he's not willing to have an independent cognitive test because he doesn't want you to know the truth about what's going on. And I believe Jill Biden, Miss First Lady, whatever, she knows this too. You know, when your spouse is going through some type of a health issue, especially if it's some type of decline, because you're the closest person to them. You wake up to them. You go to sleep next to them. You know when there is something going on. So she knows Joe ain't right in the head. And her just pushing him out here like this, parading him around, like I said, it's elder abuse.
It's over 125 days.
So the answer,
decision.
The right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that right
now.
No,
I've already done it.
You talked a lot about your successes at the beginning of this interview, and I don't want to dispute that. I don't want to debate that. But as you know, elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it.
Again, that is not a bragging point. It is not a good idea for you to brag about expanding NATO.
I'm the guy that shut Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy.
He did not I'm sorry to pause so many times, you guys, but he did not shut Putin down. The sanctions that they implemented on Russia didn't even hurt Russia. Russia's doing fine economically. How did you shut Putin down? It seems like to me, Putin seems to be making other alliances with other people. He's collaborating with North Korea now. So you did not shut him down. He's a part of BRICS. He's a part of this idea of a multipolar world. Let's stop exaggerating again. Let's stop embellishing. You did not shut him down. Ukraine has lost. They were never going to win this war to begin with. And all those people have lost their lives over this NATO vanity project.
That put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. For example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip, and we invented the chip, that little chip for the computer chip. It's in everything from cell phone to weapons. And so we used to have 40%, we're down to virtually nothing. So I get in the plane against the advice of everybody, and I fly to South Korea. I convinced them to invest in the United States, billions of dollars. Now we have tens of billions of dollars being invested in the United States, making us back in a position where we're going to own that industry again. We have, anyway. I don't want to take too much credit. I have a great staff.
But I guess my point is, all that takes a toll. Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
Oh, George, I don't know if you're going to have a gig after this one. Because George Stephanopoulos, he's still pressing and pushing Joe Biden on this issue. He still keeps saying, but are you going to have the cognitive ability to do this? So we'll see. George, are you still going to be at ABC News after this?
I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look, I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way. We're on our way. And look, the decision recently made by the Supreme Court on immunity, you know, the next president of the United States, it's not just about whether he or she knows what they're doing. It's not about a conglomerate of people making decisions. It's about the character of the president. The character of the president is going to determine whether or not this Constitution is employed the right way.
We're going to go on a little bit more. There's a pause there in between, and then they get to the next part of the interview. I don't know, you guys, like, this is bad. This is really bad. And I just think about the fact that this could have been completely avoided. Okay, we'll get back to the next part here.
But for a more personal question, are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am, because, George, the last thing I want to do is not be able to meet that. I think, as some of the senior economists and senior foreign policy specialists say, if I stop now, I'd go down in history as a pretty successful president. No one thought I could get done what we got done.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump?
Joe Biden is focusing on his success, what he calls his accomplishments, instead of focusing on the cognitive ability. And that is essentially the question that George has been asking over and over throughout this interview. He wasn't asking him about his success right now. He's getting into the stuff, but he wasn't asking him about that. If you were able to pass, any type of policies to help the American people. He's asking about his cognitive ability, which is essentially important, whether you're president of the United States or whether you're running a company. The reality is we have global wars now under the Biden administration. We need to have somebody in the White House that is mentally capable of making a game time decision, preferably someone that can get us out of these damn wars. So it is very important. And I've told you guys all along, I believe Obama's really running this ship. I believe Barack Obama is the one that's kind of leading and guiding Joe and all this kind of stuff. I don't think Joe Biden's making all these decisions on his own.
Right now.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
You say that, and let me challenge you.
Sure.
Because you were close, but behind going into the debate. You're further behind now by any measure. It's been a two-man race for several months. Inflation has come down. In those last few months, he's become a convicted felon, yet you're still falling further behind.
You guys keep saying that. George, you know polling better than anybody. Do you think polling data is accurate as it used to be?
I don't think so, but I think when you look at all of the polling data right now, it shows that he's certainly ahead in the popular vote, probably even more ahead in the battleground states. And one of the other key factors there is it shows that in many of the battleground states, the Democrats who are running for Senate and the House are doing better than you are.
Two things I want to add about this interview. First of all, I don't know what that noise is in the background of this interview. I don't know if there's a fan on or something, but the audio was not superb for corporate media. So I'm kind of surprised by that. I don't know if they tried to record the audio separately or whatever, but the audio was kind of finicky. So there's that too. But the other thing here, the reality is, and this is what Joe Biden doesn't want to accept, the polls are saying what they're saying right now. The polls can change. But I think it's interesting that Joe Biden has no problem with the polls when it shows that he's leading, when it shows that he's ahead. But when it shows that his approval rating continued to decrease, and it showed that he's behind Trump in the polls, particularly in the swing states, all of a sudden the polls aren't right. All of a sudden, don't believe the polls. They're wrong now.
Well, that's not unusual in some states. I carried an awful lot of Democrats last time I ran in 2020. Look, I remember them telling me the same thing in 2020. I can't win. The polls show I can't win. Remember 2020, the red wave was coming. Before the vote, I said, that's not going to happen. We're going to win. We did better in off year than almost any incumbent president ever has done.
You were able to win in 2020 because, let's be real, the DNC and the other Democrat Party leaders got behind you and got other candidates to drop out of the race. And that's how you were able to pull ahead and win in 2020 in the Democratic primary. Because the reality is you were not winning among the Democrat primary candidates. Bernie Sanders had won New Hampshire. He won Nevada. We all know Iowa was crazy, but some were even going back to say that the numbers did show that he won in Iowa as well. You won in South Carolina because the Democrat leaders got in line and said, we are going to vote for Joe Biden. That was particularly someone named Jim Clyburn, who rallied his troops around that. Then on top of that, the Democrat Party leaders told other candidates to drop out as we headed into Super Tuesday. So that way, the race was just between you, Bernie, and Elizabeth Warren. And Elizabeth Warren stayed in that race purposefully, knowing that she had no chance of winning, to split the vote between her and Bernie Sanders. So that's why you were able to win, is because there were things happening behind the scenes. People were moving different chess pieces to make sure that you would jump to the top of the polls. So it's not like you just magically just defeated everybody because you just started performing better. You had help.
They said in 2023, all the tough races we're not going to win. I went into all those areas, all those districts, and we won.
All that is true, but 2020 was a close race. And your approval rating has dropped significantly since then. I think the last poll I saw was at about 36%. The number of Americans who think you're too old to serve has doubled since 2020. Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win in 2024?
Not when you're running against a pathological liar. Not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged. Not when people...
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, I sure had months, but I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world.
That is a terrible statement right there. He said, I was also doing a lot of other things like wars around the world. He's right. That's what he was doing, starting wars around the world. And he said this right in front of George Stephanopoulos on ABC News. He said this. He admitted to everybody, I was doing a lot of other things like wars around the world, you know? I can't believe it. Oh, my God.
NATO together, like working anyway. But look,
do you really believe you're not behind right now?
I think it's all the pollsters I talk to tell me it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And when I'm behind, there's only one poll I'm really far behind: CBS poll and NBC. And
New York Times and NBC both have you about 6 points behind in the popular vote.
That's exactly right. New York Times had me behind before anything having to do with this race. Had me behind 10 points. 10 points had me behind. Nothing's changed substantially in the New York Times poll.
Just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the Electoral College.
7 million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
Is it worth the risk?
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
This is typical stubbornness. This is Joe Biden is being very stubborn. I don't buy that. No, it's a reality, man.
You know, the heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing?
Oh, come on. Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
They're just wrong?
It's wrong. Look, Trump is a pathological liar. Trump is, he is. Have you ever seen anything Trump did that benefited somebody else, not him?
Here's the thing about the lying, and this is what I feel like people like Joe Biden don't understand, particularly the old school, like members of the Democratic Party. They don't seem to understand that a lot of people don't care about that. Donald Trump was lying in 2016. That didn't stop him from winning then. Let's be real. Joe Biden also tells a lot of lies. As I mentioned to you earlier, like this is just, both of them are liars. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are liars. And these are the people that they're telling you to choose between. There are other people running, you guys. There's a reason why they're not allowing the third party independent candidates to get on the debate stage, because they don't want you to see that you do have options that are better than these two. They're better than both of them. It's embarrassing. They want you to stay in this duopoly. And at what cost?
You can't answer, I know.
I've questioned him and his allies as persistently as any journalist has.
No, I know you have. I'm not being critical.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical. But look, I mean, the man is a congenital liar. As I said, they pointed out in that debate he lied 27, 28 times the times, or whatever number, over 20 times. Talk about how good his economy was, how he brought down inflation, how this is a guy who, unlike only other president other than him, is Hoover, lost more jobs than he created. This is a guy who told us to put bleach in our arms to deal with COVID, with over a million people died.
Was he lying about the economy, though? Because a number of people that I've spoken to said that their pockets were a lot better under Trump's administration than Biden's administration. That's just a reality. This is why you can't get caught up in the personalities, because if you're someone that loves Trump or you're someone that loves Biden, it's going to be hard for you, right? If you just like them because of personality, it's going to be difficult for you to criticize when there needs to be criticism. And the reality is, when it comes to the economy, if you ask a lot of people, economically, they were doing better under Donald Trump. I'm talking working class people, not under Joe Biden's presidency, where we have this high inflation. So was he lying about that? I'm not saying he didn't lie about other things, but was he lying about the economy, though?
This is the guy who talks about wanting to get rid of the healthcare provision we put in place. This is the guy who wants to give the power back to big pharma to be able to charge exorbitant prices for drugs. This is the guy who wants to undo every single thing I've done. Every single thing.
I understand that. I understand that's why you want to stay in the race. But have you convinced yourself that only you can defeat him?
I convinced myself of two things. I'm the most qualified person to beat him, and I know how to get things done.
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
Uh-oh.
It depends if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that, I might do that.
Well, I mean, on a more practical level, Washington Post just reported in the last hour that Senator Mark Warner is assembling a group of senators together to try and convince you to stand down because they don't think you can win.
Well, Mark is a good man. We've never had that. He also tried to get the nomination too. Mark and I have a different perspective. I respect him.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate, how will you respond?
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race.
But it sounds like, according to what George is saying, Biden, it sounds like that some of these people may be changing their mind. I saw a statement recently from Jim Clyburn that said, maybe it is time for someone else. So some of these people behind the scenes apparently are starting to change their mind. And Joe Biden, this is a complete stubbornness of Joe Biden to sit up here and to try to push something that he knows in his heart and obviously in his mind that this may not be the best idea. This may not be the best thing to do, but pride and ego and stubbornness is keeping him where he's at.
Stay in the race. None of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I get out of the race, the Lord Almighty's not coming down. I mean, these hypotheticals, George,
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been
Well,
reported.
I met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Akeem. I had more time than that with Jim Clyburn.
That doesn't mean they're not seeing things about you behind your back, though. So basically, folks, Jesus has to come down himself and tell Joe Biden not to run in order for him not to bump. That is one hell of an ego. You have one hell of an ego, man.
I spent time with many hours off and on the last little bit with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors.
I agree that the Lord Almighty is not going to come down, but if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
This is terrible, you guys. He doesn't even want to answer. I'm not going to answer the question. It's not going to happen. So this again is Joe Biden showing you that he refuses to move and get out the way, you know? And the rest, a lot of people are sitting back and they're saying, you know, like Ludacris, move, get out the way. This is it. Just so much pride.
What's your plan to turn the campaign around?
You saw it today. How many people do you draw crowds like I drew today? You find me any more enthusiastic than today? Huh?
I mean, I don't think you want to play the crowd game. Donald Trump can draw big crowds. There's no question about that.
You can draw a big crowd, but what does he say? Who's he have?
But that wasn't the question. The question was, he said, how many people can draw a crowd as big as I can? Your crowds aren't that big. Joe Biden's crowds, especially when he was running for president, but also now that he is president, your crowds are not as big as they should be, especially considering you are the incumbent. George Stephanopoulos is correct about that. Donald Trump had hundreds of thousands of people in New Jersey, in a blue state. So it's just, that's the reality of it. He can draw a bigger crowd.
I'm the guy supposedly in trouble. We raised $38 million within 4 days after this. We have over 1 million individual contributors. Less than $200. I've not seen what you're proposing.
Those are people that have money to give to you, Joe. You have to win over African-American voters again, which you've lost support from African-American voters. You've lost support from Hispanic voters as well. You have to win back that support from younger voters, which you've also declined with your support with young voters as well. The people that you have to win over to come out and vote for you are most likely not the people that are donating to your campaign.
You haven't seen the fall off in the polls. You haven't seen the reports of discontent in the Democratic Party, House Democrats, Senate Democrats.
I've seen it from the press.
So much.
Okay. Now I want to show you the difference because just 4 years ago, so are we ready for that? I want to show you what he looked like just 4 years ago, because again, it has not been that long ago. Very short clip here, and a quick shout out to Jules for sharing this. Jules says, it is genuinely crazy how different he sounds today. And this is just 4 years ago. 4 years ago.
Nobody making less than $400,000 will pay a penny more in tax under my proposal.
That's a promise.
That's a guarantee, a promise. I give you my word as a Biden. That's an absolute guarantee.
And you think it's a good idea to raise taxes when the economy is in dire straits?
Depending who you're raising them on. Look, if you're raising somebody who's making $1 billion a year, it's not a problem if they pay 39.6%, which everybody should pay, raise another $90 billion.
Now you look at me and you tell me that that's the same person. You look at me, you tell me that there's no difference. That was just 4 years ago. So here's the reality, folks. And the Democrats really like dug their grave with this one, because your options are, if you believe in the two-party system, is to vote for Joe Biden or vote for Donald Trump, or hope that Joe Biden steps aside and Kamala Harris assumes that position. And then you got to vote for, Kamala the cop. So this is the perfect point in time for people to break away from the two-party system, for you to choose third-party or independent candidates. Now's the time for you to break away. I don't remember another time in my adult life where it's been this powerful, where you have independent and third-party candidates that have name recognition, that are actually doing okay in the polls for third and independent candidates. Because the reality is, folks, if you vote for Joe Biden in November, you're actually voting for Kamala Harris. Because do you really think that Joe Biden is going to be able to govern for the next 4 years? Another 4 years? No. At some point, he would step aside and Kamala Harris would slide into that spot. So that's what you really need to be thinking about. Trump hasn't announced his VP. Trump isn't at his sharpest either. I've said this too. Compare his debates to 2016 to now. He's not at his sharpest either. So we don't know who Donald Trump's VP is going to be, but whoever that VP is, chances are you probably voting for them too. So this is what we got to pay attention to, folks, because it turns out that whoever you select as the vice president actually does matter. You can break away from all of this. You can break away from all of it. Otherwise, you might end up with Kamala at some point. Do you want more 4 years of this? This is a parody of Kamala Harris.
Oh, damn. I'm Kamala. Okay. Happy 50th birthday to hip hop. When people think of me, okay, they think hip hop. I grew up in Oakland. I'm wearing this shirt. I scream hip hop. Hip hop! So yeah, I'm into hip hop. I want to give it up, okay, to all the greats. So Missy, TLC, ODB, DMX, okay, ABC, and LGBT, okay, Q, Lil Nas X. Giving it up. We here at the residence. It's lit. That's a word I have said before. A wise, okay, man once said, to the window, to the wall, okay, to the sweat, drop down my balls. Skeet, skeet, motherfucker. Skeet, skeet, goddamn. Those words are poetry, okay? I mean, it rhymes. So technically, that's poems. Happy birthday, hip-hop. Kamala out.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't want that.